Well, kia ora and welcome to Tech Bytes for this month, November 2025, episode 53. I can't believe we're ticking past 50 now and heading towards 100. My name is Craig Young. I'm the CEO of 2Ns, the Technology Users Association of New Zealand. If we've not met before, I'm sure if you're listening to this, most of you will have. I'm really pleased to say this morning I'm speaking with Paul James. I haven't met him in person yet, but I think I've been in the same room with him several times at different meetings and things. So, look, thank you, Paul, for giving us your time. I know you're incredibly busy. And while your name is known in some circles, most of our listeners, or many of them, may not be actually aware of like your breadth of influence. So, how about you introduce yourself, what you do, where your hometown is, what it was like growing up, and what you do now?
Brilliant. Yep. Kia ora, Craig. Happy to do that. And as you said, that your podcast here is ticking over 50 and heading towards 100. That feels very much like me as well, actually, in terms of age. So, look, great to be here and to have this discussion and to share a bit more with your wider audience about what we're up to in terms of tech and government. So, look, my name is Paul. I'm the Chief Executive of the Department of Internal Affairs. And in that role, I inhabit a range of other roles. I'm the Secretary of Internal Affairs, also the Secretary for Local Government, and I'm the Government Chief Digital Officer. So I went to primary school in Te Kuiti. I went to high school in Timaru. So I've grown up in kind of small and medium-sized town New Zealand. Uh, Went to university, then moved to Wellington, and I've had a career in the public service since the early 90s. Um, Department of Internal Affairs is a really diverse organisation. People will know us for passports. But we do a whole range of things. We house the National Library and Archives. We're responsible for identity services, which is passports, birthdays, marriages, but also digital identity. Responsible for about 14 different regulatory systems, including gambling, anti-money laundering, some stuff around digital safety. Responsible for local government, so I've spent lots of time on waters infrastructure in the last few years. Three waters and now local water done well. Um, but also responsible for digitalising government in terms of providing leadership. And I was actually here as a deputy chief executive about a decade ago and did a little bit of the policy work for GCIO as it was then, as it started off in DIA, including the Cloud First policy in 2013. I left the department, went to Ministry of Culture and Heritage as a CE, and when the job came up here, I thought I was really keen to come back because actually this digital business is hugely interesting and hugely important. So I've been here for the last 7 years.
Amazing, awesome. Just a little bit, you are the CE of DIA, but you're the Chief Digital Officer. So do you have a digital and technology background, or is it just an area of interest for you?
Yeah, no, I'm not a technologist by background. So I went and heard Sir Tim Berners-Lee spoken to Papa probably a decade or so ago. He asked in the audience who here has coded, and I reckon about 97% of the audience put their hand up, and I didn't put my hand up. But look, technology's evolved so much, right? When I started in the public service, it was paper files and faxes. It's unrecognizable now, really, as to how we work and actually how we live too. And I just think it's hugely important for the public service that we're relevant and responsive in a digital age. We serve the public, and to do that, we've got to be moving and evolving. I see the value for the public service, and so it's just caught my imagination, really, digital.
Yeah. I mean, from a perspective of two ends, as a users association, it's not a bad thing having the government's chief digital officer being a user and not a tech person. I mean, I'm an accountant by profession, for heaven's sake, but please don't hold that against me. So, yeah.
Well, look, I think, Craig, I've got a branch, the digital services branch that Miles Ward, who some of your listeners may have heard of. So he only does digital government. He is a technologist. So of course we've got technologists in senior roles here. And actually one of the benefits of GCDO being in DIA is I've got heaps of tech myself as the CEO of a big complex department. And I've got legacy and all the normal experiences and problems. And so as GCDO, there's a real world lens for me. I can't talk theoretically about it. Actually, I'm grappling with it as well. I think that's actually valuable.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Some of us may be thinking from the outside, the government in its broadest sense is not particularly tech savvy, but because we don't see the inside. So, given your role, can you disabuse us of that view?
Sure. Look, what I'd say to people is every government department has got a CIO or a CDO. They've got people who are knowledgeable and passionate about tech. So technology is all through the public service. Um, Actually, government departments are pretty mature in terms of their technology. So in COVID, the vast majority of government agencies just went home and kept working because actually people were able to access at home. They were able to pick up their device and go home. So, government departments are actually pretty tech mature. How do New Zealanders see and experience that? Look, just examples. You think about the New Zealand Traveller Declaration as you're coming back into the country. We're one of the first countries in the world to do that online. So, we have got examples of things. In my own department, registering birth of a child, 97% of people that do that online now. Lots of departments don't do that, countries don't do that. So actually, we are pretty technology engaged in the public service, but there's no finish line, right? There's always more to do,
Mm,
and there's always things to be working on.
mm, yeah. And I suppose, things like I was on a call with European organizations like ours, and there's quite a lot of discussion in the UK around digital identity and passes, etc. So we've got those coming. We've got digital driver's licenses being talked about. So
Yep.
there's a lot being developed, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Look, you'll be aware that two of our key things that we're driving this year is around the uptake of AI and
Yep.
then ensuring Kiwis are safe and secure online. So let's just start with that AI one because you Minister for Digitising Government, the Honourable Judith Collins. We spent quite a bit of time with her when she was in opposition, so we know what's driving her, and she's certainly driving down that track. Well, as the government's CDO, what's the government's thinking in practice at this time on how to use these new tools that AI is enabling?
Look, one of our real focuses at the moment, Craig, is on executive education around AI. So there's a good degree of digital maturity in the public service. So most other people in leadership roles have got responsibility for some digital system and have some nous around that. We need to be the same around AI. So we're really looking to mature the capability in the executive leadership of the public service around AI. I think the possibilities are tremendous. We can start to see them, but the reality is still quite uncertain. And actually, we need to build the capability of people to see, to imagine, and then to deliver that. And that's a lot of where our focus is. And so we've been holding masterclasses for chief executives and deputy chief executives. We've had people coming in from offshore to be part of those, etc. Because this is going to go fast and far, but no one's entirely clear where it's going to go. And so building the capability and leaders to engage in that, that's one of our real focus areas. Our minister's resolute about AI is hugely important, and she's pushing us hard. So we survey public service agencies on a range of things, including AI. 2 years ago, we surveyed them. Everyone was thinking about it. No one was doing much, would be my summation. We surveyed again about middle of this year, 200 use cases across the 42 departments that are the core part of our mandate. So, a really good uptake of experimentation, piloting, primarily in the back office and administration, not in services yet. But that's the right place to start, right? To start building capability, to start piloting and seeing where you get to. So look, we're encouraged by what we see, but there's a long way to go.
I think the those use cases, I mean, that's the thing that is interesting to share with people, isn't it? Because we know talking to digital leaders, they're often trying to think of, well, what use cases will make real benefit. That report or that review of and survey, is that available on your website somewhere?
Yeah, it is. So digital.gov.nz, that's the home for all of the GCDO related work. So digital.govt.nz, and it's all up there. We try to be very open about those things.
Yeah, it sounds like a great resource. Look, so actually, as a key thought leader, as we move into this second or third year of persuasive generative AI, what are your impressions on how prepared for the future we are?
Look, there's a couple of things, Craig. Look, I'd start off by saying AI has been with us for a while, as most of your listeners will know, but generative AI is the thing that's captured the public mood and awareness. But clearly, the technology is a game changer too. But it's what's coming down the track in terms of agentic AI that's really going to make a real difference, we think, for the services of the public sector. How prepared are we? Well, we're really looking to build capability in leaders and awareness of technology. We're also really stressing that the foundations that are important in terms of digital are critical for AI. We can't stay off the journey of working on the foundations, in particular, cloud adoption, data governance and structures and your data processes, they will be the things that determine success or otherwise of AI. And we've made good progress on those, but we've still got a wee way to go. It's a big, complex beastie, the government. So, for example, cloud consumption, when I started, we were about 32% across the core public service. We're at about 45, 46% as of 12 months ago. Surveying again at the moment, we think we'll be up to about 55, 60% in about 2 to 3 years. So that's hugely important in terms of unlocking the potential of AI.
Mm.
Data, data, data. I think we should be encouraged by the foundations we've got in place, but we've still got work to go on those foundations. So the technology will come. Our ability to use it is going to really drive off those foundations.
Yeah, look, I know it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I was on this call with our European partners last night talking about data sovereignty, and
Yep.
they talk about geography. And so I had to start talking to them about, well, there's a cultural sense to data sovereignty as well that we're dealing with in New Zealand as well. And so you get this not clash, but this interest from the UK, in particular in Europe, around, well, we want to make our data available as widely and broadly as possible. And I said, well, yeah, that's fine. But when you've got a cultural lens as well, when you're not, you've got to think through those things as well. Yeah. So it's fascinating conversations.
Yeah, and look, the reality is that digital sovereignty is actually more complex than people might imagine. And in the European context, they've got big data centers kind of here, there, and everywhere, right? It just wasn't the same when I started here in New Zealand. We were really worried about in-country processing of data centers. And we worked with industry. A number of vendors have made their own choices now, and we see a whole lot of data centers being built in New Zealand, which is great. But that's only one part of sovereignty, and it brings a whole lot of resilience and security in. But what we really encourage people to think about is just being really smart about your data and where it resides and where you need it to reside. And lots of the public sector data is actually pretty mechanical, pretty administrative, no real issues with it floating around into processing centers in Sydney or Singapore, etc. But what's the data sets you need to keep on,
Yeah.
much more control of onshore? So it's a much more sophisticated topic than people sometimes appreciate.
Certainly, it is a lot more complex and something that we're looking to get a bit more into as our leaders have shared with us. Can we talk about AI a little bit more? Come back to that because we were very careful when we wrote our AI theme this year, which was to encourage the uptake. So we used the word uptake to encourage it, but we used the words of responsible and inclusive use. So, as the government's CDO, well, not just as a government CDO, but as a person who's got a real interest in this, yeah, what do you think should be meant by this term responsible and inclusive use?
Look, it's a great question, and we talk about adoption of AI, so that's our framing of it, right? And we're trying to drive up adoption. But the whole public sector should always be responsible and inclusive, regardless of actually not talking about technology, but we serve the public. That is the nature of the public service. We have to hold trust. We have to be transparent. We have to be accountable. And so responsibility and inclusiveness are part of that. We have to serve all the public. And that means that we have to be mindful about the nature of the public, that not all are the same. And so what does that mean for your channel strategy, for your service delivery, and for those sorts of points? And so, of course, I think we've got a head start in some ways because that's just the way we are. And so we need to apply that into AI as well. We've got a series of guidance and tools out there for the public service, including a framework for adoption. We basically picked up the OECD principles, which embed being responsible and inclusive in them, tailored it for the New Zealand context and made a few tweaks, but very much trying to build that into our guidance, our frameworks, and our principles.
Yeah, now next meeting, we have an AI working party, which is a free to join group of our members. In the next session we're meeting, we're going through those OECD principles again to remind us, but also looking at the thing that the Office of the Privacy Commissioner just signed.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just can't remember the name of it. Anyway, we're going to be going through that because there is there's some good stuff happening as we go through this. Look, AI isn't the only technology though that's sort of on our doorsteps, though, is it? I mean, you looking across the board. How do you see other technologies playing a part in and how they'll develop over the next few years for government?
Yeah, look, a great question again. I think our stance is to not be absolute bleeding edge as the public service. we want to adopt rather than necessarily be the developer of these new technologies, and we want to move fast, but in a responsible and inclusive way. So that's the balance we're always trying to strike. Uh, our thinking then is we've got to have the foundations right. It's the foundations that will enable you to actually move with whatever the next technology might be. And we need to prioritize agility as well. And there's a whole lot of things that come into agility. Part of it is actually being mindful of vendor capture and lock-in, not getting too stuck in particular things because as technology moves, you need to be able to move with it as well. So rather than trying to spend lots of time on predicting what the next technology will be, it's really about how do we set ourselves up to better move when that technology comes in. AI has just captured our attention at the moment. We're not looking a lot past that, but you can certainly see other things on the horizon as well.
It's that fast follower mentality that
Yeah,
I think
yeah, exactly.
we're good as Kiwis, and probably that's where we need to be in,
Yeah.
the uptake of technology. Is there anything we should be looking out for coming from government in the short term that people will notice?
Yeah, look, a couple of things from us. So, we are very focused on both digital identity, but also some of the service channels that sit there at the moment. And so, Minister Collins has announced the development of a new all-government app. For a few years, we'd been a bit mindful about not necessarily having one channel around digital for a whole range of reasons. Partly it was actually the foundations and just things didn't necessarily connect or work in that well, but also the resilience and security risks about just one. However, we now think that both our foundations, but also the technology and customers are ready for a bit more of continuity of service. And so this all-government app that will be built in kind of beta version by the end of the year, and we'll look to iterate it over the next 12 months, start adding in functionality. It's a place where we'll see some of the higher volume, simpler transactional services come so New Zealanders can get into the habit of going to that one place. But it's not just simply an app for services. We're looking to put in place in there a wallet that will enable New Zealanders to hold digital identity credentials, also a messaging platform to try and remove the insecurity of email and text and some of the other message channels. And also looking at how we put in place a payment system, which is not for government to pay, but actually for New Zealanders to pay government when we collect fees and charges from New Zealanders, and again in a secure way. So that's the functionality that we'll build out over the next 12 months in that app. So definitely on the radar for people, hopefully.
Look, I have to say, I've renewed my passport several times over the years, and the ease of which of being able to do it, through your phone, take your photos, and not have to go to the chemist, etc., etc., and the speed at which it comes back, is pretty impressive, compared to what it used to be like.
Yeah, and look, we that was world leading, and we still are world leading in that. But it's a great example too, Craig, because digital's never finished, and because I operate that service, so I know all about it. So yes, it works really well, but we've still got issues. We're still trying to piece together some of the back office a bit better. We've still got to modernize some of the underpinning technology. But actually, one of the issues we've got too is only 30% of those photos flow through smoothly.
Uh,
So 70% there's issues.
mm,
So we've got to touch that with people sitting and intervening and remediating. Now, it's okay when the business is predictable and stable, but we've got some massive volume increases coming our way because of cyclical demand patterns. And so we need to get from 30% to 50%. And so we've got to tune the technology and think about the user experience and the guidance. So you're never quite finished with digital, is my view. And even that service that's really successful and people really enjoy, we've still got things to work on there as well.
yeah, I just had the experience of applying for the UK ETA, and I think I had to take my photo three times to make sure it worked properly before it would even accept it. Look, sorry to sort of go off on a tangent there, but let's just turn our attention to safety and security because you are talking about that. New Zealanders, every individual is aware that they want to have some control over their identity. Although, to be fair, some of us have given a lot of it up to multinationals already, and some of us, like you and I, our faces are on media, so there's no real sense in having to hide who we are. But how is the government aligning itself internally to deal with those increasing risks and threats? And I'm thinking about cybersecurity in particular here because it's growing and it's, we're hearing stories of weaponization of AI, etc.
Yeah. Look, again, a great question. We could probably spend an entire episode on this
Yeah.
in some ways, but our view on security is we always think about it and we try and have it built in from the start. So security by design. What that looks like, for example, we administer an all of government procurement portfolio for on behalf of public service. $1 billion went through that last year. That enables us to bake in base level security requirements into those constructs, those commercial constructs. We work with security agencies. So there's the Government Chief Information Security Officer, who's the CEO of GCSB, regularly. We've also put in place a public sector certification of data centers, and that has got security baked into it as well. Security agencies have done some really good work on security blueprints that those vendors are using in their data centers. So, we try and get in at the start, in the ground floor, to build those kind of security foundations. But you're right, the technology is evolving really quickly as well. We just have to be really mindful of that. And that's partly, again, the caution in terms of fast follower, not bleeding edge. So let's just see where this goes. I do think we've got some advantages in how we're designing things. So our digital identity ecosystem, we're going to be decentralized and federated. So that's a bit different to other parts of the world. So, what that means is we're not going to hold digital identity centrally. Citizens are going to hold their identity credentials in their wallet on their phone, and they'll present it through the transaction through that phone. That means that there's not a honeypot somewhere of all those digital identity credentials. It is decentralized, and then we federated it around the service. So I think by design, there's some tremendous security benefits in the approach we're taking. So, it's a bit different to some other jurisdictions, but we think actually over time, it's probably going to be the most sustainable and resilient form of digital identity.
So I'll ask you a little, maybe not a controversial question, but does that mean the death of real me?
Well, I think it's the evolution of Real Me, would be the way I'd frame it, Craig. So Real Me was world leading when it was put in place, but it's over 10 years old. No tech that's over 10 years old uh, is entirely where the kind of current modern environment is. So we'll need to continue to evolve it. I think ultimately it will transition into some kind of identity credential that again that people can hold in their digital wallet. So what people might not know about it, I'll just reference another service we've got, Identity Check, that's been built by us alongside RealMe, and that's a one-off identity proofing. So you're online, you do a liveness check, yes, I'm a real person. It connects into our passports and the driver's license database, confirms, yes, that image of that person connects to a real person. Great, they're into the service transaction. So, but it's not a pervasive digital identity in that Real Me is, which holds and sustains. It's a one-off, if you like. MSD have been using that, so we've rolled it out to them. They had 100,000 users last year. So that's the sort of thing that New Zealanders will start to see more of the next couple of years.
Cool. And in the end analysis, it is about trust, isn't it? It's about
Totally.
our people having trust in what's happening and what's happening to our data. But I always come back to the one, when people talk about, well, they don't want their data shared. And I'm like, well, my medical data, which is held by my GP, when I get to hospital and I'm unconscious, I want them to know. I want the hospital to know,
Yeah, yeah.
am I allergic to something? Yeah.
So it's one of the great conundrums of digital government that we talk about, where New Zealanders are like, why do I have to keep filling this out multiple times? And then they're like, but we don't want you to share it. It's like, well, how do you unravel that? But equally, we talk about moving at the pace of trust. So, we can't get ahead of the trust of the public. Look, an interesting fact that your listeners might be interested in too is there's a regular survey called Kiwis Count that the Public Service Commission does across a whole range of parts of the public services. We got some questions put in there 12 months ago around the citizen experience of digital services. What it told us is there's actually higher levels of trust in the digital services than in the face-to-face services. Now, I think that will reflect the biases of the people using those services, but equally, it shows that we're in the right place and on the right trajectory in terms of the trust of New Zealanders around their digital services.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Look, okay, well, just heading into the last couple of things I want to ask you. Considering your experience, what role do you see organizations like TUAN's, the Users Association playing in shaping the future of technology adoption and policy in the country?
Look, I think Twins has got a really important role, Craig, and I'm not just saying that, but in New Zealand, the public service, we're quite highly outsourced with the private sector. But equally, we don't think New Zealanders live their lives in silos between public and private sector. And so we need technology as a country to work effectively across public and private sector. So we need public sector and private sector voices to be coming together. I think Tuan's brings a really strong voice into that debate. We don't think we've got all the answers. We think it's really important that we don't start to think that. So, we're constantly, again, looking to hear from others, what are their perspectives, etc. So I think I see Tuan's having a really important role on that basis.
I think it's fascinating to see I don't know if you've picked up, but one of the large technology groups, IT professionals, is actually looking to close down, and that's really sad. That's a 60-year-old organization, the original New Zealand Computer Society. We came out of there 40 years ago, so it's not easy out there.
No, no, we used to meet pretty regularly with them. That sort of fell off the radar a little bit. So, it is sad to see. But there are lots of great groups out there that we work
Yeah.
with as well. So.
Look, you've worked with technology across various contexts. What's one surprising insight you've gained about the relationship between technology users you think would resonate with our audience?
Oh, look, the thing we always keep coming back to, it's a lesson we've learned many times, but we always keep learning it is it's actually about people. So, uh, both users, citizens, but also when things are working well, it tends to be the people who are part of the technology projects. When things are not working well, it's generally the people as well. So, I always try to anchor myself back to the people. And then I think one of the other things that technology really needs is imagination.
Yeah.
So trying to imagine what does this enable? What's the possibilities here in terms of whether it's efficiency, cost savings, which might be mundane, but it's hugely important for us at the moment, or actually the service experience of New Zealanders. So I think it's a fascinating thing where actually the imagination around what this enables and where it can take us. We've been talking about AI, but there's endless other examples. I think we're limited by our imagination sometimes. So hence why I think it's so important for all leaders to be thinking about this. I've stood up in front of big groups of public service leaders in the last 12 months. In 5 years' time, if you look back as a leader, AI will have been a huge part of what you've been doing. So you need to start now.
Mm, Great. Hey, look, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you, but I'm asking this question of everybody this year, which is I sort of picked it up from the from one of the New York Times podcasts, but let's finish up because it makes it a little bit personal. What are the two books that you're reading or you've read that you'd recommend to our leaders to look at?
Well, I do enjoy reading, Craig, and actually National Library is part of DIA. So reading and books is an important part of my mandate as well. I've just finished a book called Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. I quite like a bit of sports writing. So this wasn't in some way sports writing, but it was a novel about a boxing competition under 18 for young women in Vegas. And each chapter is a round or a match between two boxers. And it's really those young women's stories, their personalities, what they're thinking, experiencing as they go through that. So really nicely written, a good, easy read. Uh, just finished that. Just reading now a book about John Donne, who was a poet in the 16th century. Bear with me. It's a literary biography. It's fascinating. A really interesting guy, a bit of a polymath. I got onto that because I actually read a Nick Cave anthology of poetry a year or two ago, and he had some poems in that. And then I read Clive James's book of 85 poems that everyone should read, and he was in that too. So when I saw this book, I thought I'd give it a go. I'm only 60 pages in, but it's fascinating.
Oh, look, that sounds great. I'm thinking of reading the poetry one now, the one about John. Wasn't he the one that said no man is an island?
He may have done. He wrote a very
Okay.
famous poem about the fly, and it's actually quite baudy and sexual, some of the
Oh,
poems for the
okay.
times, because that was how they conveyed these things. I mean, we wouldn't recognize it as such in our kind of modern standards, but he's a fascinating man and read.
Look, it's been a real pleasure, as I said, to speak with you, Paul, and really appreciate you giving our time. For those who are listening, if you want to listen to this again, it's on every podcast app that you can find. Just search for techbytes.nz. You can see it on our YouTube channel. It's on our website. You can find it everywhere. Look, we're coming towards the end of 2025, our next and last episode for the year. We're going to do a little bit different. We're going to have three, I was going to say opinionated, but I'll just say strong commentators on what they've seen through 2025. It'll probably be a bit longer and a bit more chatty, so that should be a good event. But thanks everybody for listening, and thank you, Paul. So ka kite, everyone.